Greetings, families. Welcome back. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. This video is about Burkina Faso. The president went on radio and the country people has opportunity to ask him questions to find out what is going on in the country, and he has answered them. It was yesterday, but I managed to finish it today. So families, please listen to the questions and the answers that he has given to the population. God bless you all. For those who are new here, all the answers, evidence of everything he said is on this channel. Scroll down or up and check them out. Everything is true, but you need to watch and listen to understand it. God bless you. Thank you, families. I'll be back.
Direct coverage of major issues. The President of Faso speaks to Burkina Bell. Direct, the editorial team's monthly meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special live broadcast on Radio Burkina devoted to the asterisk of the President of Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traore, on the occasion of Year 2 of the transition. RTB Radio gives you the chance to interact with the head of state for around 1 hour on current affairs, defense, the fight against terrorism and other topics of national interest, live from the presidential palace in Kuloma. Like a captain at the helm of a ship. And caught in a storm, Captain Ibrahim Traore took the helm of a Burkina Faso facing security, social and economic storms. During these 2 years, the president of Faso had to navigate through the waves of challenges we all face, while keeping Cape Verde, a regained sovereignty and a future of peace and stability. Today, we take a look back at where we've been and where we're going. Listeners from Radio Burkina's synchronized network and partner radio stations, join the show by calling 2530498013. And on 25333337, my colleague Hervé Kabure will collect your concerns and bring them to the attention of the President, here live from the Palais de Colba. The telephone lines are already open. Mr. President, good morning, good afternoon, madam. Thank you for taking part in this live broadcast on Radio Burkina. Before taking the first questions from listeners, Excellency, this is the first time you've spoken directly to all the books on Radio Burkina. How do you feel about sharing this moment of direct dialogue with the people of Burkina Faso? Thank you. Hello parents, dear brothers and sisters, listeners of Radio Burkina, thank you madam for this opportunity to communicate directly with the people. So I think it's a real pleasure, and a pleasure too. A moment for me to be able to understand today, at the stage we're at, the current aspirations, therefore of the people through your antennas, and to be able to readjust our program, if we can put it that way. So, I say it was a great moment of pleasure. And thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for those opening words. That's what we'll call the first part of our discussion on current affairs. The first questions from listeners are already coming in on 2,530,498,013 and on 25333337. We welcome Hervé Kabore, who will give us his first questions. Thank you Chantal Nikema, Your Excellency. The first question comes from Sector 16 in Ouagadougou. Stéphane Kimtoure wants to know how you experienced the multiple attempts at destabilization? The second question is from Madame Kone of Gogo Doulasso, who wants to know what will happen to the plotters, and then again with the lasso. Daniel Sanu asks if an arrest warrant has been issued for the destabilizers and their accomplices? And Eugene Cambier of Batir dans la Nambile wants to know what really happened in Barca. This is also the question of Suleiman Ouedraogo. In the North Center, Salifou Salon, the office of the assault. And then the last question is Jean Il-Bodo from Ouagadougou. I'd like to have your reaction to the political orientation speech of the late Captain Thomas Sankara, in the middle of the celebration of the National Days of Patrick Boutique Commitment and Citizen Participation. How important is this to you? The DOP, when we see that its content still relevant, thank you. Thank you, Hervé Kabare, for this first round of questions from our listeners. Mr. Chairman, you have just heard the concerns of our listeners, which revolve around the attempts at destabilization, and in particular the Basalgo attack. How did you deal with these situations? Okay, thank you, madam. So I'd say it's really topical. The question of destabilization is a topical one. Before we embark on this mission, I think there are a number of risks that we need to measure and agree to insure against, and among these risks is the fact that we're not the only ones not succeeding in the mission for which we came. So when you come, it's a case of make or break. Thank God, we were able to succeed in our mission and put our own vision into practice for our country. After that, the other risk is to agree to give up everything. As a young person, you can't be at the top of the state and want to end up under mango trees eating ruzamala like the others. In other words, agreeing to forget your youth, agreeing to forget life and devoting yourself entirely to your country. Full of risks. This is the situation we're living in, destabilization. Because if you want to get a country like this back on its feet, you have to crack down. And by cracking down to rectify, you create internal and external enemies. So you have to expect these situations of destabilization, assassination and everything because we've touched the interests of a lot of people. So there's social inequality and there's corruption. There's a mismanagement of public surgery, and if we try to put things right, we're bound to touch on the individual interests of certain people. And these people, who are often rich, who have money, use it to manipulate people poorer than themselves, to finger them. In fact, that's what happens internally, and many people don't hesitate to join forces with imperialist forces, who only spend their time zambering around our thinking, or its external forces. There are a lot of countries today that we have our backs against, and we have no choice but to do it. But if we want our country to be independent, if we want our sovereignty, if we want the Burkinabe to eat their fill, if we want children to go to school without paying a franc, if we want malaria, which is one of the diseases no longer prevalent in Burkina Faso, to be able to treat our population for certain words at 0 francs, these are some of our dreams. I'm going to have to make a lot of concessions. We're going to have to prevent certain powers from bending, and that creates a lot of enemies. So we're prepared for this situation as we live it. Just like normal, that's all. So it doesn't shake us, it doesn't scare us, it still gives us the courage to move forward because through these events, we know that the guideline we've opted for is the best one for our homeland, for our people. So we live the thing like that in the plotter. Right now, we've spent 2 years raising awareness, talking, warning people found as we're 3 on guard. But it was necessary for the Burkinabe to see for themselves. How far could some Burkinabe go against their country if they had been involved from the start? To crack down in a certain way. It's not obvious that you're going to understand us. You might say, well, after a while there can be misunderstanding, and I think Captain Thomas Ankara was misunderstood. She gave me maybe because they started strong, but it was necessary to let the people understand what these plotters communicate with the people through therefore everything we've done. And today, I think people have understood a lot. Okay, the Bobo Boy listener would like to know what the fate of these schemers is. As we said, from now on, and I'm not going to go into the details, everyone is responsible. If someone takes steps like that, they assume all the consequences. We're not going to advise anyone or warn them again. So let's get back to the Barca logo case. A listener would like to know what really happened in Barcelona. Basaldo, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I think I was personally targeted because Barca and I have a history. Barca is the situation of the country has a history. In June or July 2022, you may find out more on site in Barcelona. I defied orders to protect Barcelona. I'm sacrificing a lot of things in Barcelona, and I'd like to thank a lot of people who have supported us in our maneuver to get Barcelona to be you, and I think they targeted Barca because it was going to affect me. That was the objective. I won't go into details, but maybe one day we'll have a chance to talk about it, okay? So your reaction to the political speech by the late Captain Thomas Sankara, it's a preoccupation of the songs and the work of Ouagadougou. Yes, it's true. We chose October 2nd as the date for the launch of our Patriotic Commitment Days to align with the DOB's speech. Our sub-region used this frame of reference to develop themselves. And they don't understand it because they've taken a lot from that discourse. And it's still relevant today. We draw inspiration from it and adapt it to the context too. That's it, because what may have been, there are certain things in its time, in 83 that can no longer be done today, but we adapt it as we go along. Thomas Sankara was ahead of his time and wasn't understood. He wasn't understood because he saw things that others couldn't see his vision. We were much further ahead, but today we realize that we should have. Every time, it's questions like these that we ask ourselves. Should we not have? Should people not have? But it's not that it's already happened, but I think it's a topical speech. It's the same vision for the total sovereignty of our country, and I think we need to be part of this momentum. All right. Thank you, Madam Sir. You're on the air with the President of Faso live from the Palais de Colba on. In Kenya, you can interact with the President of Faso by calling 2530-498013 and 2533-3337. Mr. President, we now turn to a crucial subject, security and defense. And for this, we welcome back Hervé Kabore to relay listeners' questions and concerns to us. Hervé Kabore is not available. Mr. President, yes then? Before Hervé Kabore finds us again, I'd like to know what the morale of the troops is with these attempts at destabilization. I'd say that troop morale is high, because when you sign up to defend your country, you know, when you're in the military and there's another natural state of mind that's there within the environment, it's within the army and getting up, it's not given to everyone, but generally in the mind of the soldier, when he leaves, it's with pride that he leaves. What we're trying to do, through the support of the people, is to help a lot of the military. Are really proud to be military. That's why they give themselves body and soul, and with all the support that the people also give them, I think that can only boost morale. It's true that these destabilization situations don't affect them, but it gives them even more courage to fight. They understand better why they have to fight for their country. They know it's not for nothing that they're trying to destabilize us. In terms of equipment, recruitment and training, if people still try to destabilize, it gives the military more arguments to boost their morale and fight. Thank you. Hervé Kabore has joined us for questions from listeners. Hervé, it's your turn. Yes, Chantal nor Clement. It's Monsieur Alassane Bedarago calling from Kaya in the Center Nord. After the Barca attack, public opinion is wondering whether sanctions should be imposed. Have already been applied against those responsible for complicity. Where do we stand in terms of justice and reparation for the victims of this strategy? This is the question posed by Mr. Wadrao Alassane Dekaya. In the meantime, thank you, Hervé. Mr. Chairman, you have the floor to reply to Mr. Outragio. It has to be said that after every attack since we've been here, after every attack, we try to analyze the situation to understand what has worked and what has not. Until we can do that, we can't improve the situation. So naturally, after the Barcelona attack, from a military point of view, once we've analyzed what happened, what worked and what didn't, we're almost at the end of this investigation. I think the military authorities have been there several times. Barca left, are still investigating through Kaya and responsibilities will be determined in a few days. I'm waiting for the result of the report and sanctions will be imposed. That was how I'm going to say all the attacks, that's what we do. And if you notice, there have been attacks where we often have to write people off. Did you fail in your duty? That's because we have no choice. As long as we're committed and feel that the flaw comes from the system, we have to crack down. So we're waiting for the final report before taking any action. And what about the victims? It's only natural. We've passed laws so that the children of those who lost their lives in that war can be reclaimed as well as those who fell in the great wars as martyrs. There are 236 children in 200,306,210,038 who have been declared asterisk of the nation, and they will be treated in the same way over time. A permanent side by side with the people over there, to be able to take care of their psychological and humanitarian needs. health, everything for all the members of the families who were affected by this tragedy. Okay. Hervé Kabore has some questions from listeners. He joins us once again. Yes, I'm just talking. Listeners have again sent in topical questions. It's Mr. Thomas Kafando from Signal who, in relation to the world of local consumers, asks what are the strategies for development genes based on products made in Burkina. And Mr. Karim Zango from Fada Demon, you have government teams currently meeting with traditional leaders. What are your expectations? Thank you Hervé for these two questions, Mr. Chairman. Okay, thank you very much. I see that the least I can do is consume locally. We've launched it, and it's very close to our hearts. If you look at the first steps we've taken in terms of investment, we've analyzed a number of factors. First of all, we need to promote what our craftsmen are already doing, i.e. the Infinir Way, the Cocodonda, and a number of clothing items. Who have decided to promote, which is what led us to reflect on teachers' keys. Dear me. And so we instructed the minister to change, for example, the keys today. It's done in the way of Infini and the ladies who do it. But there are a lot of ladies who have joined the workshop and it's a big workforce that's employed too. Those in the Justice Department have been instructed to change their touch so that they can adapt to our way of childbearing and many other social strata, even in the army. It's Fanny's way of doing it. So there are a lot of things we're trying to promote that are made locally and in many other areas, especially in processed products. At the moment, we're promoting all those who can transform our raw materials, i.e. food products, so that they can be consumed by the Burkinabe. This is why we recently issued a decree to establish the fact that if someone wants to import a product, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's made by Burkinabe, they have to buy it in Burkina first, and when that's not enough, they can go and buy it abroad. So we've taken a strong step to encourage this. If you produce locally and it's consumed in Burkina, well then, I think we're on the right track. We can't unveil the whole future strategy. Because, as I said, those who are used to importing like it. Not necessarily to apply what we want. But if we want to be Burkinabe, we have to take action. Some people won't like it, but a lot of people will, and I think that's the most important thing. Mr. Karim Zango, would you like to know what you expect from your government teams in the field? Yes, so these are releases that were programmed a long time ago, like the first releases, which coincided with the events in Barcelona, I think. We had programmed several outings, so when the event happened, we still told people to go and do the program. So during this period, we stopped the Council of Ministers for a week, and we wanted the ministers to go out and meet the people. Find out about the realities, see the realities for yourself and come back, because a minister is at the decision-making level. And if you're just in Ouagadougou and you can't understand the deep aspirations of the people, it's complicated. So it's a program. It won't be the first time, nor will it be the last. They've gone out to the people in every region to find out what's really going on, to understand the difficulties, and I think that each minister will adjust his or her program to meet the real needs of our people. It's the same state of mind that led us to approach the traditional chiefs, because we want to put them back in their shadow, in their role. To maintain social cohesion, unity and peace, they need to assert themselves and help us educate our young people. So these are the messages we want to convey to them, because whatever we say, they are key players in our society, and we want to put them back in their role so that they can help Burkina Faso return to these ancestral values. These are ancestral values of peace, unity and cohesion. Thank you for your enlightenment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for these insights, Mr. Chairman. News, security and defense are intimately linked. We look forward to hearing the concerns of our listeners. It's now 2 years since Burkina Faso, at your instigation, launched an all-out war against armed terrorist groups. What is your assessment of the reconquest of the national territory today? All right, thank you. Thank you for your time. We'll stop talking now. From the situation, therefore from the field, because this is the very essence of our fight. And as you've seen, I think that As soon as we started our actions, Burkina discovered a different face of terrorism. And that's it. So it made us realize that it's not just terrorism. I think the aim of these people is even greater than that. Last time, I was talking about fourth-generation warfare. They've manipulated a lot of people against it. They're brothers. Today, look at the terrorists as well as us. It's young people who are dying, so we have to put a stop to it. We have to stop this quickly. And to do that, we had to arm ourselves with courage, train and recruit, because our manpower and equipment were not up to the task. And I remember the terrorists saying that December 31st, 2022. They were going to celebrate the end of the year at Vagabo, and afterwards, when we did the analysis, we met up. He could do it. What was going to stop them? I can't see with their numbers that they had sleeper cells and all. If they got active one day, December 20th, like that, they could celebrate the lawyer or nothing could stop them. Unless we call on the same powers that created them to step in and enslave us again. So when we took up our responsibilities, you soon saw that we started recruiting both on the military side and also at the VDP level to try and contain the threat. Today, the army is much better equipped than it has ever been. But we're still saying that it's nothing. The equipment is going to be 10 times, many times better than what we have. We're going to keep recruiting to make sure we have a strong army. Because independence and sovereignty require a strong weapon to take responsibility for oneself, we must continue to face the threat of terrorism. National reconciliation is essential in the fight against terrorism. It's a phrase that has excited a lot of people, but people need to stop getting carried away with it. National reconciliation conflicts. We have to ask ourselves this question. We are in conflict with armed bandits who kill indiscriminately. We don't want to reconcile with them. If that's what people are calling for. We don't want reconciliation. Either they stop, they lay down their arms, they come to the Republic, but we can't let people who are killing us sit down and talk about reconciliation. We're going to fight until they raise the white flags themselves and come and we'll see. So these are terms that some people often use without even knowing what they're talking about. We get correspondence along these lines too. People who write to us to supposedly give us strategies in the direction of social cohesion and all and national reconciliation, but when you read to the bottom. Listen, you can't reconcile so-called reconciled people in this way. There are people who have destroyed this country if they have legal problems or problems with society. But we need to solve this problem. We need people to acknowledge, maybe pay for what they've done. That's it. Where's what they've paid for and all that before we talk about reconciliation? It's not a question of brushing it all aside and saying in the name of reconciliation, this isn't going to stop, it's going to continue. This is impunity. Do you agree? Let me remind you, Radio Burkina listener, that you are following a special director antenna with the President of Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traore. On the occasion of Year 2 of the transition, President Whoop will join us at 25H3,040,942,013 or 25333337 and ask your concerns. In the meantime, we're back with Hervé Kabore for another round of questions on security and defense. Hervé. Oui, Chantal Niker ma climat Guigui nous appelle de Bobo Dulation. He says he's proud of the Burkinabe army's rise to power. And would like to know if the president can reassure us that the remaining 30% will be reclaimed by 2025. Climat Guigui also welcomes the president's initiatives to make the country an emerging state. They ask, what do you say to those who think you should only wage war? And then there's Yulin calling from Gawa in the southwest. He says the forests are the nest of armed terrorist groups, so the government has drawn up a plan to equip and deploy the water and forestry services to liberate and consolidate these forests. Diallo Arona is calling from Easter. He asks if there are any plans to open a police station in the communes that don't have one. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Hervé, for this series of questions. We'll start with Clement Guy Gamde's question on reclaiming the national territory. 70% to when the remaining 30% will be reconquered. The wish to win back the 30% tomorrow. But we're going to get to work quickly if you've noticed the intensity of IPBC operations during the rainy season. The rainy season is coming to an end, so operations are set to resume. I was telling some people that the equipment I recently handed over to the forces, nobody sees it in the field first, so the people are training very well at the moment, they're ready. So in a few days the fight will start up again in earnest and we hope to go very fast. Reconquering as much as possible, greening up as much as possible, greening up in our jargon. It means having spaces where people can go sightseeing and do whatever they want in total freedom. Really free, as we say, without fear. So that's what we're developing, in tandem with defense and security. Because the frontline forces are evolving, we need to reorganize the security forces at the back to ensure the population's peace of mind. So we're continuing. 2025 is decisive, and we're going to work towards that goal so that we can win back the remaining 30%. D'accord de gauche dit, le gouvernement a prévoit un plan d'équipement pour les forêts, NID des groupes armés terroristes? And the deployment of water and forests to free and consolidate these forests? Mr. Chairman, that's what we're here to talk about. Unfortunately, it was a bitter truth. They were there in their posts. As I was saying, you could find 10 forestry officers in a post with just one gun. So if you go for years without touching a gun, it's a bit complicated to say today that you can inject them directly into the forests. Forests are battlefields, so if the military are currently searching the forests, it will be them. Who go? Free the forests before installing water and forests. And we're continuing to recycle water. If you'll notice, there are certain units that we've taken a little bit that we're trying to recycle and bring up to standard so that when the military finishes certain portions, they're now settling in and it's started. There are some forests inland that have been cleared by the military, and the water and forests that have been recycled have resettled. So we've re-equipped them, and we're continuing to do so as we go along. So let's get the firepower up so they can contain it after the military has gone through. Okay. Let's get back to the second part of the guide's climate questions, which asks, what do you say to those who think you should devote yourself solely to war? There are people who know too much too. I don't know how they analyze the situation now. What led to the war? You have to ask yourself a lot of questions, of course. Outside powers are already manipulating people, but what makes them succeed in doing so? We can't wage war today without developing. If you do, you're mistaken. As I've said, if we go to war, we're going to kill all the young people in Burkina. If they don't have anything to do, they'll be enrolled either by these individuals who come from outside to sell them false illusions, or some of them will take up robbery and so on. Today, in some areas, robbers are almost confused with terrorists. Because if you go out on a road and start stopping buses, you run into a patrol. They're going to fight you like a terrorist, but if the young people haven't worked, what are they going to end up doing? It's an activity, it's said, it's the mayor of all vices, so you can't wage war without development. You have to create jobs. You have to keep young people busy. Towards Pacamode routes so that they can stay, concentrate and work. So these people who say we just need security, I think they're either not acting in good faith or they don't understand exactly what this war is all about. That's why there's no war in developed countries. It's in our so-called poor, impoverished countries, so we need to take back our wealth and give jobs to young people. And I think that goes hand in hand with security. Still on the subject of security, would Haruna Diallo Depa like to know if there are any plans to open police stations in communes that don't have any? If you've been following along, there was one of the councils of ministers where we reorganized the security architecture, with the gendarmerie taking over certain rural communes and the police refocusing on certain urban communes. So this ray de coupage has been made and we've given these two forces time to reorganize and adapt. And I think it's already started in several areas, with police officers taking up their positions and gendarmes also moving into these positions. We made a list. There were many communes where there is no police station or gendarmerie, and we find ourselves in certain communes or towns where the posts are doubled. The police and the gendarmerie are there, together, but they're trampling over each other and can't get the job done. So it was with this in mind that we decided to draw up a text to situate the area. Geographical truth for everyone, so that all communes have the presence of a security force. So it's going to happen in the decree. There is a deadline for implementation? Okay. No one should exceed it, and we're following it very closely. All right. Thank you, Mr. President. We're still working on defense and security. Hervé Kabore has joined us for another round of questions. Hervé Kabore, you have the floor. Thank you. Ibrahim Traore from Oradera asks us, despite some progress, the security situation remains difficult. In certain regions, what are the main obstacles to securing the country? And Shirley Nyong's Law. Volvo asks, what does the government plan for committed VDPs whose age is advanced and who can't be recruited like some in Sawadgo for really a one? An internally displaced person from Maduari asks nationals from the eastern region use Benin numbers for calls to Burkina. Their behavior seems suspicious. Why aren't they being arrested? And then Sanukubaka at the basin to many of the assault. Marked a decisive turning point in Burkina's foreign policy. What impact has this decision had on our security and international alliances? Thank you, Hervé Tabare, for this series of questions, Mr. Chairman. We'll start with a question from Madame Traore Ibrahim Traore. This is it. On securing the country. It has to be said that, as we said at the outset, I was talking about making spaces completely green and we can have reconquer territories, set up forces, but the enemy can still make frequent incursions. Because it's a guerrilla war and it could happen today, as I said, we've prepared the logistics to launch the phase that will completely regreen certain areas in the next few days, as the rain is almost over. We can't go into detail about this phase here. It's going to be a lot of work, certainly, a lot of things will be done. For now, the areas we have reclaimed must be protected from incursions. It's just a question of when we're going to revegetate these people so they can't make any more incursions and all that. This also led us to re-articulate the security forces, so that when we put all these devices in place, everyone settles in the zone where they need to be. When they are there, the intelligence, and with the VDPs changing on the spot, should make it possible to prevent any incursion. So it's a process. Everything is being done to ensure that certain areas will be completely opened up as time goes by. Agreed. The VDPs are helping to reconquer the territory, but Loy Sama Danayagaloko would like to know what is to become of these committed VDPs, whose age is advanced and who cannot be recruited like some in the civil service and others. Yes, we have a plan for their retraining. It's like the military, too. Arrive at. If you notice with the initiative. Presidential Initiative for Food Self-Sufficiency. We've already launched a program in the Army. There are reports on this to teach certain military personnel of a certain age to gradually reconvert to farming, animal husbandry or certain trades of their choice. That's because there are also people who have specialties, for example people who have done engineering and they can be in other companies to express their potential there. So that's it. The same goes for VDPs. Already, when I was there, I went once to Bagur and I exchanged with VDPs there where I saw that there were a lot of elderly people who couldn't be recruited and who had already asked to have land at the edge of certain water points for farming. So we have instructed the BVD to do everything in its power to enable these people to set up and produce. So we're encouraging the VDPs to do the same, which has led in some places, if you notice. They wage war and produce at the same time. And when we want to disengage them, we want to be able to help them set up in their chosen field, so that they can continue to contribute to the development of Burkina Faso. Sarajevo. Bulehima from Mathjoari in eastern Burkina. Here, he informs us that nationals from the eastern region are using Benin numbers for calls to Burkina. Their behavior is suspicious. Why haven't they been arrested? Thanks to the listener, in fact. The complicity is also very great as he said, and it's already very difficult to fight, but we take complicity into account as a difficulty and we manage to overcome it. The majority zone, as he said, Many zones, certain zones in the east which are not accessible, are part of the 30% of the territory we have to reconquer. These are forest areas and quite difficult in terms of combat, but people taking foreign numbers, calling and all. For sure. That perhaps they have other intentions, or are already involved in other things. But we're waiting to get out there and reconquer and see what's going to happen to these people. That's all I can say. But for the moment, we can only speculate, if I may say so, on the matter, since we don't know why they're calling like this. But we know that many people were arrested in the eastern region for complicity with terrorists. He supplies them. He dedicates himself fully to supplying terrorists, and many have been arrested. Operations in this direction are ongoing, so they have nothing to worry about. We're off to the basin with Mr. Sano Boubacar, who talks about the denunciation of the agreements with France, which marked a turning point in Burkina's foreign policy. What impact will this decision have on our security and international alliances? So, as I was saying earlier, our actions are intrinsically linked to many people abroad. So denouncing these agreements is one thing. But it's not just that. There are other things that aren't visible, that people haven't perceived. There were other forces in addition to the French forces here, for example, who were sent away and left in silence, without really making any noise. But people continue to act against us despite not wanting to leave or being happy. There were mining licenses given to powers that refuse our companions, and a good number of permits have been withdrawn. This may impact us, but we must prioritize safety. It used to be a step-by-step process, but we've taken that into account. Thank you. I remind you that you follow Special Director Antenna with the President of FASO and Direct of the Palace of Kolba. You can reach us at 2,530,498,013 or 25333337 with your questions and concerns, and our colleagues will relay them. We now turn to our final section, Axis 3, which covers other topics of interest to the nation. Hervé Kabore has joined us for this final round of questions. Yes, Chantal, Nick, Emma. Your Excellency, AMA Diallo is coming back to the subject of security and defense. He's in Dori in the Sahel, and you've undertaken the reorganization of the army, with new units and strategies that are producing results on the ground. Maimouna Ouedraogo calls us from Bitu in the Central East. She says the humanitarian situation. Also more worrying, and what strategies are underway to ensure the protection and return of the displaced to their locality of origin. Your Dragets Mumuni is displaced in Malik Taba in Takari. He asks what is being done, just like Madame Ogadago from Bitu. What is being done to speed up the return of displaced persons to their home villages? They call on him to increase the number of recruits in the FDS to liberate them. Give again under a bus of heroism. Thank you, thank you. Hervé Kabore, Mr. Chairman, the question of the return of internally displaced persons. Est is mentioned. What did he do to return to his hometown? Thank you very much. A lot of people have already joined us, but there are also localities. Even though we often set foot, we tell people not to come. First of all, they're told to wait, because each locality is different. Vision that's not seen in the same light by terrorists. As some have said, there are certain localities that are geographically strategic in this war. So there are areas where the forces may have reconquered a few months ago, but they haven't allowed the population to return. There's a job they're doing, and then they come back to the rear and tell the people to follow them and settle down now. Those who had already settled in were able to spend the season. No security issues, some areas will be resettled at the end of the season. Measures are being taken to support them through to the next season, enabling them to have some activity. The Minister for Humanitarian Action updates me weekly on the returned individuals and their care. Those who have to turn around. What's planned for the care? There are times when I can step in and readjust certain things according to the different zones. And I see there's a lady who talked about B2B2 for example. Well, the people are there. I don't know if there's any bitumen displaced elsewhere, but there are certain villages, perhaps in the Central East, that have yet to be set up, but work needs to be done around certain forests. Before allowing them to settle in, the VDPs are there. We've told them not to set up for the time being because we haven't finished the job. Okay, as you've already pointed out, the number of Momo Drago recruits is 1 PDI. He's still calling on you to increase the number of FDS recruits to liberate areas still under terrorist control. Yes, we are recruiting. Over the 2 years, I think we've recruited over 30,000 people, almost exclusively in the army, and the other forces have also recruited. We've doubled, if not more, the army's mass of forces, therefore, to be able to cope. But we're off to a bit of a start. Recruitment is slow due to the complexity of the process. We have gradually increased our numbers from 5,000 to almost 15,000. Training cannot be rushed, and I would like to thank certain countries, especially the A.S., who gave us a hand at the start in Niger. We sent trained troops to Niger to come back and settle. We sent troops to Mali, trained them. We sent them to Togo today, since we took our destiny in our own hands, as we say. Most of the European countries that offered training to Burkina have systematically closed, and some countries unfortunately as a result. Our neighbors have also automatically closed military ties with us, and have sought out our trainees at home. We've responded in kind. Tomorrow, we understand that we can train ourselves. We don't necessarily need to, because training is a question of experience in war, and we readapt by taking into account certain parameters for new recruits. So we set off at a pace. It may seem that the regime needs to recruit a lot, but we also want to train them well, equip them well so that they can be effective in the field because the threat. Reorganization of the army. Come back. This is a question from AMA Diallo Dodori, and he asks what the result on the ground with this strategy is. But if we hadn't reorganized and created organic units, we couldn't hold out. We couldn't. As soon as we turned the corner, the intensity of the fight increased. And we had to adapt automatically. And in our army, when we say a unit, we mean people who live together, who know each other and who fight together. And when situations arise, they're all ready to die together. But they can't behave in certain ways. We haven't been fighting as a unit for a long time. We like to say, in our jargon, that it's dues. Everyone sends soldiers, we gather and talk. Certain positions still in this configuration. And it's hard to fight like that. You go out on the pitch, you don't know each other very well, you're not used to it, you don't even know his name. You're attacked, you don't trust like a soccer team. If you start bringing together people who have never seen each other, who don't know each other, well, it's very difficult. And all our detachments were like that, our units were like that. And so we quickly understood that we had to change, because we had done it ourselves. I've been out in the field with men I don't know, and I tell you, you're blue, you go out, you arrive, you don't know what to do. You don't know who you are. Even that's very complicated. So today, we have organic units that have helped to contain the situation. We've created a lot of marbles, and at police level, we've reorganized a Gomis. They have more than a dozen who have been able to contain the situation in certain areas. At gendarmerie level, it's the spirits they've created. There are 3 of them, I think, who also provide security on certain strategic axes. So we're going to continue to create organic units. The army is currently reorganizing to put an end, within a given time frame, to these detachments where there are contributions. So to have organic units. Then we'll have a well-structured, well-organized army and units worthy of the name. We look forward to hearing more from our listeners. Mr. President, how is the fight against terrorism coordinated within the area? In view of the increasing number of attacks in space? Aus. Yes, the coordination is going very well, and as you said, the attacks that are multiplying have made it clear. S is a target. It's about Africans coming together. It's not good for other people, so we have to do everything we can to break this alliance. We understand, but that's what we're here for. And that's why we started very early on to set up liaison officers immediately in each country. So there are Burkinabés in Mali and Niger, taking part in the center of operations. There are Malians and Nigerians in Burkina, and so on. So in each country, teams of officers have been dispatched to act as liaison. To coordinate everything in inter-arms at the operations center level, training is crucial. We've done a lot of training together, and if you remember from the start, there are people who have reported in the meantime from the Guinean Special Forces who were here. They came to help us train and in the AES. We've done a lot of training together. You must have seen the rumors circulating about the Canadian forces at Niamey Airport. So, right away, we did training together, but we also do combat together. Every week, you'll find Burkinabe and Nigerian units maneuvering together. So coordination can be more than perfect, whether in terms of ground resources or air vectors. We manage to coordinate very well and support each other as much as we can. The Sahelian force is currently in the making. What is a joint force? We have each. There will be a single general staff with a very large force to act throughout the whole area, and this is something that may take a few months, and we're working on it. Antenne Directeur Spatial with the President of Faso continues on Radio Burkina. Once again, we meet Hervé Kabore for other topics of interest to the nation. Hervé Kabore. Thank you Chantal Nakema. Excellence Monsieur le Président Jean by Belga, student at Bobo Dioulasso, wishes to raise recruitment aid in the army to allow many people to participate in the fight against terrorism. And Issa Yamiro also to Bobo Dioulasso. And he says, the mobilization of resources for the peace effort is insufficient given the security challenges. How can we fill the gap? And Idrissa Savergo calls from Ouagadougou and asks why the former president of Amibas has still not been extradited to Burkina. Thank you, Idrissa. Thank you Kabore. We'll start with the last question. Why has the president of Amibas still not been extradited to Burkina Faso? So I agree on that point. I think it's been known for some time that he's been involved in these destabilization projects and so on. But the last project was linked to terrorists. So we resumed discussions with the Traore's authorities today. Maybe we should get together. But as this was the exchange I was to have with my people, I decided to postpone this meeting. We're here because, in all honesty, we didn't want to behave unpleasantly with a former president in the first place. Whatever people say, he's a former president, so I had public authorities. He can stay there. We don't have any problems and we communicate very well with the Togolese authorities about everything that's going on. But really, there's nothing to worry about when it comes to certain visits. Who would tell us, if they wanted to do certain things, they would actually warn us? I think they too must be shocked and surprised to find out what's going on. But we've already spoken on the phone, but we can't talk on the phone about sensitive subjects. We need to meet in person to discuss a number of issues once we've done so. So you'll know where you stand on this issue. So you can reassure public opinion that he will very soon be extradited to Burkina. I'm not reassuring, I hope so. If I say I'm reassuring, I might be lying if I'm not. I prefer to say that I hope so. We're going to answer Mr. Pac Belgage's question about raising the recruitment age for the FDS, to enable many people to take part in the fight against terrorism. I think we've already done that, haven't we? If we have to lift too much, they won't have much time for activity. Last year, when we switched to FADA at the university, some students expressed just that. We just launched the gendarmerie competition, I think. Immediately, I instructed the statements to take up the communiqué and raise the age by 2 years, I think, and that was done. And now, this year, we've gone up to 35, so 34 or 35 for soldiers. The academy too, we started with an age. A bit limited, but they've redone the release and raised the level. There I have it again. So I think that where we are, at the level we're at, it's not bad if we raise it too much. We'll be recruiting people who won't necessarily be physically fit to keep up with the pace of training. This could pose a problem for the aging army in a few years' time. So we need to calculate all this before taking any action. But we're going to study it, okay? Remember, we're just one resignation away. In view of the interest, the president of Francio has agreed to give us an extra 30 minutes. We'd like to thank him for this, and we'll continue answering questions from listeners and Mr. Issa de Bogat do Lasso. Let's put it this way. Resource mobilization for the peace effort is insufficient in the face of security challenges. How can we bridge this gap? Do you agree? In any case, the security challenge is enormous. It's not enough, but it does allow us to do certain things. Some partners have agreed in the acquisition of equipment. But we'll see. We're on certain issues, but we're hoping to put together a certain number of arguments to take it to the people. And it will be up to the people to decide whether we can do something else to mobilize or not. Because today, since we've been here, you're never going to go anywhere to want even a franc close up to equip yourself and that you're going to have. So we've understood that. We've removed the question of loan credit from our military equipment issues, so it's the people who contribute, and we try to do what we can with it. But until then, we're waiting for certain equipment. When we launch the battle, if there's a need to increase the pace of mobilization, we'll bring the arguments to the people's attention, and the people will decide what to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Radio Burkina listeners, take part in the special live broadcast with the President of Faso by calling us at 2530498013 or 25333337. Hervé Kabure has joined us for questions from listeners. We're listening. Oui, Excellence Monsieur le Président Cadiero de Pora asks if the Pora gold mine is on the government's agenda. Clement Guigui de Bob Modulation Revient asks when will salaries be reviewed so that everyone can live decently? This is also the question of the Ambre Cassing in Bromont. He also asks what measures are being taken to make free movement in space. Why not set up a cereal bank in each village supplied by producers when we know that Sonajiste has shown its limits? Mumani Sawadgao calls us from Lumbila and asks what's next. He reserved for the project to open up Lake Bam and its opposite Tioler de Gawa in the southwest. When can we expect U.S. currency? Merci avec Camourt pour cette série de questions Monsieur le Président, en répondant à la première question de. He's asking if the Pora gold mine is on your agenda? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It has to be said that all the gold mines are currently on our agenda, because we do know how to mine gold, and that's what I was saying. I don't understand why we know how to mine in the north and why we don't know how to mine in the south. Multinationals are coming to exploit our death. So it's in this sense that I said that there are permits that we're in the process of withdrawing, and then we're going to do it ourselves. So the gold mine is one of the mines that we intend to exploit. APEC, if you see APEC started with its first mine in the southeast zone. We're going to continue as they ramp up to give them permits to mine themselves. And us? Which Supramab is also currently operational. That's how I know we've paid the 2,000 Bonho. Sopranik will also own other mines, enabling it to exploit these industrial mines. This could well be one of them. All right, Clement Gillamdeer, when are salaries going to be reviewed so that every book can live in dignity? That's also the question of Habres Kasun in Bromont. Social inequality. So a lot of people are calling for this, and I think it's an issue we're going to have to tackle sooner or later. Whatever we say, there's going to be some gnashing of teeth, as they say. But we have to tackle this at some point so that everyone can live with dignity, as they say. But before that, we wanted to put ourselves first. A number of lines. Study and see what can be done in general. Because, as I say, we need to understand this force. First, its potential. That's what we're doing in the mining sector today, and we're realizing that if we take possession of our mines again, we'll succeed. Lowering the temperature of this war. Maybe we won't need to go back to the way we said we'd lower wages. We'll see how we can bring certain salaries back up to par. But for the moment, we're continuing to monitor the situation and hope to make an assessment of our military spending in 2025. Should we continue to increase military spending in 2026 or not? And the mines we'll be exploiting in 2025? What's in it for us? Does this allow us to raise some people's salaries and balance things out a bit, because it's really disparate? Some are. In terms of salaries, I'd say immeasurable compared to others who are really dragging their feet, and we intend to balance the scales, so that's reassuring. We don't necessarily want to lower the salaries of some people, but we're going to see what we can do to put everyone on the same level, based on our potential. All right, the question of IS comes up again. What measures are being taken to make free movement in the A.S. without snowshoes? When will US currency be introduced? I think this racket issue is on the agenda. Give instructions to the Minister of Security to start cracking down on this investigation issue and speed up the process. I'm also reassured that they're investigating, because it's broader than what we're doing. The network, the snowshoes, these are not good behaviors, especially, unfortunately, security forces who do it. It's really not good behavior. When we want to go into the union, into the configuration in the week 7 weeks, I think the experts. Security identifiers are meeting in Bamako, and the aim is to harmonize a number of documents. For travel and identity, there will be an AS identity card and passport for easy movement. In every country, a number of provisions are in place to enable users to report or at least denounce cases of racketeering. Already after 9 ways, we have taken many measures. But it's currently being implemented, in particular the call center, which can also be used. The denunciations which can be made up to the prison of way, and we set up the CRD which must undergo to the above all the other considerations of texts which can exist, and the Karag, as one currently says, is instructed also. So to investigate any form of corruption of the investigation or mismanaged files, they are on it. In the days to come, things are going to come out, and we're going to instruct the justice system to take the necessary measures so that people caught in situations like this can pay. Agreed. Matthew Bagwono de Thinedo subject. Why not set up a cereal bank in each village, supplied by producers? Yes, that's a good question too, and I see he even mentioned the Sona Jest. Sona Jest had a lot of problems. So we've changed management and I've asked the minister to increase the number of silage stores. But on having his own trucks. To be able to transport the grain and store it, because his agency operated on a rental basis. You can't rent stores, rent trucks and want to be efficient, it's complicated and it's a circuit. So that's why they're currently building warehouses in certain areas and acquiring their own trucks to be able to serve them quickly. And also PEC, which is involved in what they call a cereal bank. In fact, they're in the process of creating it, so they've already targeted the first areas. I don't know if the markets have already been launched or not, it's just to have. Central Purchasing Office, similar bank account. Farmers will be able to sell their cereals from there, in a very controlled way. Because today's speculation is so strong that when people go to the woodlands, they impose the price they want on producers, they are often obliged to give up certain cereals and they come back to raise prices. Out of control and resold. The producer himself ends up with nothing after months of hard work. So we've taken that into account. The PEC is also going to get involved in creating these central purchasing units in several communes, which should help to relieve a lot of pressure on the population. Still on the subject of food security, how is the project to open up Lake Bam going? The minister has been there. I think not too long ago. The Minister of Agriculture has been there. He came to give me an update on the situation, and we're working on it now. It's also evolving, in terms of security, which was limiting. I can assure you that around the lake, a lot of things are being done, and I think that those who are out there, kayaking or otherwise, should be able to see these things. We're not going to give it all away here, but we're working on it because we need to redevelop the lake, make it more viable and benefit many people. So the project is underway. In any case, the ministry is working hard to get it up and running quickly. Thank you for your response. Once again, we welcome Hervé Gabore for questions from our listeners. Thank you Chantal Nikerma, Excellency Mr. President. Alassane Lene, along qui dans le beaucoup du monde, asks, why aren't all cancers treated in Bagi? And Madame Sarada Dakori also wants you to take a close look at the Cancer Care Initiative. Julian Agawa asks, what plans does the government have to solve the problem on RN1 at the RN point? Doug, which experiences flooding overflows every year. And Amber Kasun asks, what's the solution? To reduce the number of job seekers in the civil service, thank you. Thank you Erica. The first concern of a listener, why does not takes into account at least all cancers at the CHU Bogota? All right, I'll come back to this once more on certain parameters. We have a program, we have objectives, and as I was saying about the poet of education, the objective is for education to be free in Burkina Faso. We can't say exactly how long it will take. Like I said, we're assessing the potential, trying to do some things ourselves, and hopefully we'll get there. Words that we're trying to take care of already, and if you see lately the mobile clinics for sale for how do you call it breast cancer to go do a mammogram and all the forms, fork out a lot of money, it's not even accessible to everyone. Today, we can give thanks to God in many regions. It's free. The cancer center, which treats cancer, is the only one there at the moment. The second is being archived in Bubu. So, already, not everyone can come. Secondly, let's evaluate. It used to be closed, but we came and reopened it. Putting it back together works. But if we say we can take all cancers for free, we can't take all cancers into account at the moment. If we say we can't, people will flock to us and we won't be able to provide the service. Do you want my way? Okay. One of mine comes back with a safety question. What is the government planning to do to solve the problem on RN number 1? At the RNO bridge, where it overflows every year, I have to say that we're very concerned this year. Last year it happened, we saw it. This year, however, the road was blocked for long periods. I told the Minister of Agriculture, through the ONBA, to go ahead. As soon as the water level drops, and to make us a proposal, I think that first of all we need to let a lot of water through. We'd like to build a very large dam, deep enough to go back up to where it's the instructions I gave him so that we'd have a big reservoir there with a very large dike. And at this level, I say to see how with the new dike, already the voice itself can be a double voice. Because it's a natural opportunity, we have to stockpile. I was told about the possibilities, and therefore the reluctance of the people living in the area. I said, but we have to communicate with them and make them understand that it's for their own good. If we have 1 billion cubic meters of reservoir there, it's only going to benefit the surrounding populations, so we're on that. We're just waiting for the obese level and they'll launch the studies, consult with the population and see how we can quickly build a very large dam down there. Do you agree? Damber Kassim de Beaumont asks what can be done to reduce the number of job seekers in the civil service. What's the solution? That's what we're doing to promote other types of employment. When we encourage the creation of SMEs and funds, we've tried to merge everything to create a single fund that can effectively support the FBDS. That's one thing. The second thing is that we're focusing on production activities, agriculture and livestock breeding. Whatever, a lot. We want people to go back to the land and we want to support them. Today, if you look at most of the men where there are big dams, a lot of young people have taken up floating cash fish farming. I've seen the pictures at Bobo in Saint Mande. It's a veritable industry that's started up in the south, where it began, and in the Care Zone, where it's very popular. So we want to get young people much more involved in production. Do you want us to import? There are enough jobs to be created through agricultural production. I think it's something that wasn't valued before. But we're doing everything we can to get young people back to those fundamentals. Thank you Mr. President, special live broadcast with the President of Faso. Here we are. To hear the latest concerns of listeners with Urve Kabore Excellence Monsieur le Président Awa Koulibaly de Bakui dans la boucle du monde dit. A number of structuring projects have been announced, including the railway, the Burkina Faso National Nuclear Energy Agency and many others. Can you tell us about them? And on the progress of this project, these projects of the month, Emmanuel de Gogo in the center south, in front of the food is expensive. What is being done? What's being done to reduce the price and relieve the population? Angeline Yort de Leo asks about the projects, the bill. Marc Barbeau, a geography student at Kuku Ledi, asks when corruption will end in Burkina. Thank you, Hervé, for your questions. Mr. Chairman, we receive many questions from listeners. Awa Koulibaly from Bakui would like to have details of projects such as Faso Rai. There are many rail projects planned in order to upgrade the outdated rails and locomotives to international standards. This led us to prospect around the world to create rail lines, and we realized that the cost was very high. The last file I saw, kilometers of rail, we're talking between 17 and 18 million euros, so over 10 billion. If you do 300 kilometers of track, you're looking at over 3,000 billion. So we decided not to go into debt for this kind of construction. We prefer to send jobs to Burkina, so we're setting up a Karma factory to produce the rails and lay the track. And it's people from Burkina Faso who will be working on the rails. So that's why we're prospecting them, and we're well on the way. We're now in the process of drawing up the contract with the partners who are also coming on board. To implant it and produce an ear, we'll still be able to serve it. That's a lot of areas in the country. When will corruption end in Burkina Faso? It's a concern of Mark Gagagbo, a student at Kokoldi, the end of corruption. If we say that corruption can end completely, that's a lie. But we are working to drastically reduce corruption if we hadn't already reached a certain level. We couldn't cope. Many people have already said from the start that we can't pay the salaries, we won't be able to do it if we can't do it, but we're here, we're paying the salaries, there are no additional resources, there's nothing, which means that management has changed and we're going to continue to wax, to crack down. But as I was saying, Korik will soon be bringing out files and investigating them, so we'll be able to get to work on them, because there are some very big corruption files, and when we get to work on these prosecutions, I think the temperature will drop a little. The collection. Okay. Angelina Iago of Leo says this, bills including currency change has been withdrawn from the A.L.T. What's preventing the withdrawn process from going ahead? No, it hasn't been withdrawn, there's just a parameter we added last council. I don't know on the report made mention of this in the official journal, they'll be able to see, it's just an addition we made so it's back on the A.L.T. immediately. On the evening of the last council, I think they're going to pass on this, otherwise it hasn't been withdrawn. That's why, okay? Dear Radio Burkina listeners, we received a lot of questions, and despite the 30-minute extension, not all were able to be asked. But rest assured, they will be passed on to the chairman. Before concluding, I would like to invite you to address a word to all our listeners and to the workers of Radio Burkina. The 60th anniversary of this radio station is approaching on October 25th, a symbolic date for this public service medium that is always close to the people and committed to informing them with rigor and professionalism. Thank you for starting with Radio Burkina. I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for all the work you've done over the years, and the work you're doing right now in the midst of this crisis, to reach people in the depths of our villages. Because radio today is an instrument of information and awareness. So congratulations to all the staff and happy anniversary in advance. We hope that you will continue to educate our population, and we will do our utmost to improve your working conditions and support you in your task. And as for the people of integrity, my people, I wanted to once again, I offer my congratulations and encouragement to all those who are fighting for our country. Whether FDSVDP or civilians, everyone fights from their own position. The ordeals are tough, with many events happening. Condolences are for ourselves, because we are all brothers and sisters when a death occurs. It affects us all, so I'd like to take this opportunity to offer my condolences to all those who have lost loved ones, and also to wish a speedy recovery to those who are currently injured. So that's the effect of the terrorists, and above all the FDS or BD, to stay the course, a lot of courage, and may God protect them in their fight. May God protect all these resilient people who fight day and night alongside one of our forces to keep Burkina Faso alive. Thank you all, Excellency. To conclude, we have received questions and contributions from listeners all over Burkina. As speakers of several national languages, listeners would like to hear your closing remarks in one of the national languages. Thank you. Maybe I should have answered in the national language. Even if my God, my Morid is not perhaps supported as they say, but it would be a pleasure. In the meantime, I'm back in class with Mina Minister Pellin to learn the real pain, the real Amori anyway, Onuktai Avenue, Amina La Fedran, Alakabeka Lanamo Sabatier Alaka.
Thank you, families, for listening up to this stage. I hope I'm not that late. It took me a long time to get this together. I'm so sorry for being late. Thank you. God bless you all, my returning, my new, those who are passing by. My name is Mamli, and you are very welcome. Thank you. Leave comments. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.